items on there. See if Amber will be joining us here shortly. Carter, let's go ahead and start with you about the Downtown Development Authority.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. It's good to be with you tonight. The request has come, as you can see, with respect to the letter from Mr. Hall to, for the council to consider the possibility of the DDA creating a whole separate nonprofit entity that would be charged with the operation and oversight of the David Street Station. And so pursuant to that request, the agreement between the city and the DDA requires that the city council give their tacit approval pertaining to that aspect of their oversight being changed. And so with respect to agreements and so forth that would come forward, particularly on the advent of the creation of the 501c3, which has not occurred yet, council will be given further information and those kind of things. But the reality is, none of this can start without the council giving provisional approval at this point in time. So with that, Mr. Mayor, council, that really is the question. And Mr. Attorney, if there's anything you'd add, I'd defer to him.
Everybody kind of understand it, and if there is any questions, anybody comments in relation to that? Okay, how's council feel about that? Original, everybody's good? Okay. That's good. Thank you.
We'll let them know. Thank you very much.
It's that time of year, and I'm not talking about Christmas, but boards and commissions. And with the turnover of the new leadership, also the boards and commissions. And so you probably have seen in the packet here that the boards and commissions are there. Steve, who is coming in as the new leadership, had made some thoughts of maybe looking at that now, and you can get a hold of him if you have some ideas on two fronts. One, if you're on something and you're like, hey, I've been on here, I'm ready to move on, do something different. Or secondly, if you would like to be on something that you have not done before, kind of just starting that conversation early with the boards and commissions. And so I don't know if you have anything you want to say, Steve.
Pretty well sums it up. Yeah.
Email you, call you, either way.
Either way.
So call Steve, or shoot him an email. Either way on those. Okay. Thanks, Steve. And thank you for thinking ahead. Plowing services for Rustic Pines, Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The homeowners association associated with this particular neighborhood has asked that they be given an opportunity to work out an arrangement with the streets division of the public services department, so that indeed services pertaining to plowing and that type of care be allowed to be provided on their own and without having to rely on streets to get to it when they can, which generally speaking for a neighborhood of that size and for streets of that classification doesn't happen too often, as you might imagine. Given that it's not a collector, it's not an arterial, and so on. In this particular circumstance, it just so happened that a licensed contractor is one that can do that and has a relationship with this neighborhood, this HOA, and pertaining to the real prescriptive pieces and parts of this proposal, we would suggest that an agreement for these kinds of services might be real appropriate and probably be value added to the neighborhood and services of which they would provide. In other words, we wouldn't have to pay to have a relationship. The neighbors are essentially providing those costs. And so we wanted to bring this to your attention in that this particular services agreement does require your approval and would be something we wanted you to be aware of before you see it come to your formal consideration, if you will. Mr. Brower helped put a lot of that together and has some more detail than what I just offered. If it pleases the council to entertain that.
Hi, Tom. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of hit the highlights of the items that we discussed. We brainstormed this internally and then worked closely with Wallace Trimbath, the attorney's office. Wallace was incredibly helpful drafting a very concise agreement, but one that I think is agreeable and protects everybody. There's just a handful of things I wanted to go over. First thing is they needed to have a homeowners association or some legal entity that included the lots. We just didn't want, neighbor Bob that had an old pickup that wanted to plow the streets and make some money to just take on, plowing the streets. So they had to have an association where all the property owners were in some legal entity. The association needed to notify all property owners. And in that, they needed to notify who was the person that was plowing, the fact that they were responsible for plowing. So those property owners wouldn't be calling Chad Rogers down there and saying, why haven't you plowed my street? Or I don't like where you put the snow. The next one is if the agreement would be renewed and that there would be an annual fee of $100. We talked about the actual costs of processing the agreement. And that they, before the snow season started, that they would meet with Chad Rogers, and discuss their proposed process, their procedures for moving the snow, and just make sure they were coordinating and everybody knew who was involved. And that all the costs would be borne by the homeowners association. And the company hired had to be a licensed contractor and had to be bonded and insured and licensed in the city of Casper. So again, we just didn't have somebody out there plowing that had no licensure, and that they had responsibility for any damage to the streets. The city streets, curb and gutter, manholes, valve boxes, all those items, if they damaged them, that they would be responsible for repairing them, and that they had to plow and remove all the snow. This is a big deal for Chad because he struggles every year. It's not this year so much so far, but he struggles every year finding places to put the plowed snow and where to stockpile it. So they had to plow the streets and remove the snow as necessary, that they had to maintain access for emergency vehicles and the residents, and they had to maintain two-way access. And so, and we went through this. Wallace was very helpful in putting together what I found to be a very clear and easy to read agreement, and actually believe it's in the best interests of the city of Casper to approve the form, and then hopefully approve the first one that's there, which is with Rustic Pines.
Questions for Tom? Michael?
Just two questions, Tom. Can you remind me where Rustic Pines is located? And then secondly, you said $400, is that $400 per resident?
Counselor, Mayor, Counselor, it's $200 per year for the annual, just
resident?
for the whole homeowners association. But that's the agreement fee. That's not their cost for plowing. That's just the fee to, the fee for the city to have Chad meet with them, to have our attorney review it. That just covers the basic costs.
Okay.
So that's not for plowing at all.
I see.
That's just the agreement fee.
I see.
Rustic Pines is directly north of Rustic Ridge,
Okay.
which is kind of above Manor Heights School right there.
Okay.
Did I address all your questions?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Tom?
Thank you.
Mr. Carter, is this informational that we'll be voting on? Move forward?
Right, yes, sir. If unless there's other things council wants done with regard to that
Thank you.
agreement or arrangement, yeah, that's
Does
correct.
council see any issues, problems?
Thank you, Mayor. No issues or problems. I'm just curious, is this the first time we put together an agreement like that?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, this would be our very first foray into a formal relationship with an HOA like this.
So not a problem with that, but I feel like it's gonna force open the door for more of them to see this happening. So my concern is if we have all the other alternate routes that we plow anyways for our residents that we're not getting to, are we getting, where's the priority on this? Is it after the C route plowing?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, the good news is that this would be a service area that we typically don't get to at all. And so we will not have to change what we do, but rather be aware that there is a concerted effort in this particular neighborhood at their expense to do that on their own with regard to guidelines that we set. Otherwise, it would be illegal to do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For people's edification, this is a one-way, it's a two-way road, but it ends in a cul-de-sac. So it goes nowhere except back out to the collector. And I know at one time, did the 8 inches stay in the agreement?
Mayor, Counselor, I'm drawing a blank on the 8 inch. I'm not sure.
They had originally, when it was originally brought to me, they were talking about only wanting to do it when they got more than 8 inches of snow. And I didn't know whether that was staying in this agreement or not.
Mayor, Counselor, we didn't do anything prescriptive on the amount of snow.
Okay,
It really is up to the homeowners association. If they want to go out there and plow only when they have 8 inches or only
Okay.
other appreciable amount, it is entirely up to their licensed contractor that they pay for to decide when to plow. We just want to make sure they maintain the access, are licensed and insured and those type of things.
thank you.
Yeah, and Mayor, if I
Please.
might add, approving this will not put any additional burden or expectation on city crews. If the HOA decides not to plow until it gets to 8 inches, that there's no blowback on the city. So the agreement primarily is to protect the city and to ensure that they're doing it consistent with city guidelines.
Any other questions? Yeah, Carter.
Mr. Mayor, just one more point too. I know that snow storage is often a big concern with regard to neighbors and with respect to folks who want plowing services and those kind of things. This arrangement will not impact any of the snow storage areas that we are having a tough time finding as it is. So we should not see any implication with regard to that challenge that we currently face either.
Great. Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, from our standpoint, it seems like a real win-win.
Jenna.
Regarding snow storage, just one quick question on that. I think maybe just a refresher, but we had that with the snow storage in the BMX track place, over there where pool was at Mike Cedar area. So are they because it's always a muddy mess when it starts to melt right there for them. So are we still kind of moving it over? Same spot, just not directly in front of them. So it's less muddy. So it kind of goes into that ravine.
Mr. Mayor, that certainly is the plan. That of course will be highly contingent upon the volume, that's right, that we get where we may not have much option. The other side is council did allow for some 1% funding to go to that organization to help pave some of that area.
Right.
And hopefully that'll mitigate a lot of the muddiness as well.
Anything else? Before we go to agenda review, I'd forgotten that we're also going to talk about, thank you, Tom. We were going to talk about the seating chart. So every year or two, when a new leadership is brought in, that the seating chart generally changes. And so there is a new seating chart that has been decided and worked on. And so we talked in leadership today and or you'll get a copy of it when you get an email. Take a look at it, and Steve said today in leadership, he said, if you get it, you're gonna look at it and you're like, oh, I don't want to sit next to that person. Quietly tell Steve and let him know. No, but if there's any issues or anything like that, let Steve know. Take a look at that. So take a look at that. That should be coming out too. So almost forgot to talk about that.
Thank you, Ray.
Yep, you betcha. Okay, agenda review, Carter.
Mr. Mayor, I really have nothing to bring up of much substance here. As we discussed last week during a similar point in the agenda, you will be having your third reading of the Wyoming Boulevard Gannett intersection rezone there, pursuant to the petitioner, Curve TV. And, once that is done, then we can start with the development side of things, which would include the traffic study. That's been a point of discussion.
Anybody have any questions about maybe that or anything on the agenda tonight? Clarifications or anything? Okay, all right, we got about 15 minutes. Do you have something else?
Well, just one more thing.
Oh, pretty
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
No,
The
no,
other
no, you're
thing
good.
is, we had some question last time around during second reading as well, pertaining to the changes as it relates to the Board of Appeals and contractor licensing and the handyman licensing and those kinds of things. You should have seen some stuff in your information packet that was a follow-up to some of those questions previously. We also have Mr. Scott here tonight who can walk us through any other questions that you might have. This is also third reading tonight. And, pursuant to your approval, potentially, those changes will be adopted into the ordinance, if you so desire.
Any questions for Carter on this? Okay. All right, anything else?
No, sir, that should do it.
Anybody else have anything they want to touch? Okay, we got a few minutes, so let's go ahead and take a short recess and. Before we begin this evening, I would like to remind everyone to silence their cell phones. And also a reminder that council meetings are live streamed on the city's YouTube channel. I now call the December 19th, 2023 regular council meetings to order. All council members are present. Please join me in the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. Please read the consent minute rubicatatus.
The minutes of the November 2023 special council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune, December 7th, 2023. The November 28th, 2023 executive session minutes. The December 5th, 2023 regular council meeting minutes as published in the Casper Star Tribune on December 16th, 2023. And the December 5th, 2023 executive session minutes.
Thank you. The chair to entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda item just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Kathy, seconded by Councilor Pollock. Any abstentions or nay votes? I'll say all voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
All councilors voting aye.
Thank you. Chair to entertain a motion to approve by minute action the December 19, 2023 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Bond, seconded by Councilor Gamlaw. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye, say aye. Please record the vote. Now is the time when we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. This portion of the meeting is dedicated to the public to allow them a time to voice their concerns. Therefore, council will take communication under advisement, but if they choose to respond, this will be done at a later time. Please state your name, direct all questions and comments to the mayor and only the mayor. No personal obscenities or threats will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to the city manager. Council chooses to address these matters will be done during the introduction of measures and proposals by the council at the end of the meeting. Presentation is limited to 5 minutes and no duplication or no extensions will be permitted. Please note that public hearings and ordinances have their own comment period. So if you're here for a ordinance reading, whether it's the first, second, or third reading, please hold your comments until we get to those ordinances. Please.
Good evening, my name is Wes Schrecken. Last week I got my bill from the city for water, sewer, and trash. It's not too bad. Within that package was this card, and it says the penny ripple effect, 1 cent working for you. 1 cent sales tax made this bill lower. Isn't that great? It's an interesting concept. I actually believe in the concept and subscribe to Tinstop, which means there is no such thing as a free lunch. So we're either going to pay taxes, we pay taxes, but we also pay water bills. So it all goes in the same pot. The penny tax is actually the official name of it is the 1% special, optional 1% sales and use tax, not the penny tax. Tomorrow I've got a car repair, and between the labor and the parts, the estimated is $600. That's not what I'm gonna pay. I'm probably gonna pay about $630. Okay, 5%, not 5 pennies. Okay, so what I want to find out is, and I'll ask, the city at some point, maybe later this week, who created this? What was the cost of this to produce, print, and distribute? Now, I think it's probably more than 1 cent. So that's what I wanted to mention. I also wanted to let you know that I appreciate your service and all of the board members and the time that you spend in answering our questions. And we really appreciate it. I also appreciate very much the workers of the city and all the time that they spend. So I wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I pray that we'll have a more peaceful world in the coming year. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Merry Christmas. Any others who wish to address the council, the public? Okay. Please read the consent agenda titles.
For consideration of an ordinance amending chapter 13.03 of the Casper Municipal Code regarding utility billing and collection, a new restaurant liquor license number 52 for Frida's Mexican Restaurant of Casper LLC, doing business as Frida's House Mexican Food, located at 611 West Collins Drive, and transfer of ownership interest for retail liquor license number 13 for 307 Enterprises LLC, doing business as The Range at 51, located at 455 Belmar Drive, and establishing February 20th, 2024 as the public hearing date for consideration of the annual renewal of all City of Casper liquor licenses for licensing period April 1st, 2024 through March 31st, 2025.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved.
Move-
Second.
Moved by Haskins, seconded by Councilor Pollak. Any abstentions or nay votes?
I'll be abstaining from 6A1B, 6A1C, and 62A2A.
Any other abstentions? Okay, all voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please report the vote. Thank you. I'll declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the transfer of location of microbrewery liquor license number 10 for Bullhorn Brewery. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. I do. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Fleur Tremel to J. Carter Napier dated December 12th, 2023. Exhibit number 2, ad proof for publication in the Star Tribune on December 14th and 19th, 2023. Exhibit number 3, affidavit of website publication as published on the City of Casper website dated December 12th, 2023. Exhibit number 4, liquor license application filed November 13th, 2023.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. This is the opportunity for council to consider the transfer of microbrew license over at the Yellowstone Garage property. The council will be aware that indeed there is a retail license there already. And as you are all aware of, the state statutes do allow for these types of licenses to be co-located, which is in fact the proposal in front of you. Council should also be aware that this application and approval of such is contingent upon the remaining permits and inspections and so forth being completed. And so the result of your action tonight, should you approve, would be that of approving but not yet distributing, if you will, until such steps are taken, and we do anticipate that those will be happening before the start of their services.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the transfer of microbrewery liquor license number 10 to please approach the lectern. Those who wish to speak in favor. Good evening.
Guy, owner of Bullhorn Brewery. Obviously, there is 2 licenses. We moved in. The license was contingent with us moving in that we had to take that liquor license. Hasn't been a problem for us yet. We're just excited to get done. The brewery is about 90% done. So I think probably by January beginning, we should be ready for the inspections and everything.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Any others who wish to speak in favor? Okay. This time I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the transfer of microbrewery liquor license number 10 to please approach the lectern. Those who wish to speak in opposition. Okay. There being no others to speak for or against the transfer of microbrewery liquor license number 10, I now declare the public hearing closed. Chair to entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the transfer of microbrewery liquor license number 10 from Bullhorn Brewing LLC, doing business as Bullhorn Brewery, located at 2027 East Yellowstone, Unit B, to Bullhorn Brewing LLC, doing business as Bullhorn Brewing, located at 355 West Yellowstone.
So moved.
Thank you.
Moved by Councilor Haskins, seconded by Councilor Ingebretson. Discussion. Sure. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
Counselor Pollock abstaining and all other counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Amending chapter 2.64 of the Casper Municipal Code, removal or censor of public.
Thank you. The chair to entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilor Ingebretson, seconded by Councilor Haskins. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. Anybody wish to speak this ordinance? Okay, any discussion? All right, amendments. All right, any abstentions or nay votes? Okay, all voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
All counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Please read the ordinance on third reading by title only.
Ordinance approving a zone change of lots 59 to 60, Longview Addition number 2, lot 9A of the lot 9A and lot 9B Lucre Addition from PUD Planned Unit Development to C2 General Business.
Thank you. The chair to entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilor Pollock, seconded by Councilor Haskins. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers are allowed. Anybody that wishes to speak? Yep, come on up, Jay. Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm Jay Donnelly, Dan Street. I think I ruptured the back circuit.
Oh, no.
Get excited. The chief of police was here this meeting. They gave this warm and glowing thing about there've been no accidents for 5 years in front of the bank. Problem is, the racket club closed down right after that. And that cut traffic by a lot. And then the Bank of the West went out of business because they got that those people around them like the oil business. So they pulled everything. You take those two businesses out of the thing, the last three transfer studies. In 2015, there was 2,957 cars came through. In 2019, there was 2,129. And in 2023, that was 1,440 cars in a 24-hour period. The problem is, here's Outer Belt, and here's Gannett Street, and here's Shannon Drive. There's 40 feet difference between Shannon Drive and Outer Belt. And that's where they did the traffic study. And you got a traffic study coming up, and I hate traffic studies, and they're gonna be full of bull. But that gives you an idea of what's coming on this traffic study. You gotta put the traffic study up in the middle of the block or up the end of the block where we need to put a stop sign. Traffic studies are just a way people to get what they want. I've seen a lot of them in my time, and every one of them could be refuted. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time.
Any questions for Jay? I think you're good, Jay. Thank you. Any others that wish to speak for or against it? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members. My name is Brent Living out of Forest Development. I'm representing the ownership of 15. Just glad to be here. One of the things that we want to do is the common team is to make sure that it works for the city. So as far as we get work, we would refer to thank you, Commission, Councilman, Commissioners.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Thank you, sir. Any others? Okay. Any discussion? Yeah.
We move the traffic study up to where he's talking about when we do that.
City manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Counselor, the traffic study that would be required of the developers to perform will not necessarily conduct analyses for every intersection in the neighborhood. And so we may be getting terms mixed up a little bit when the speaker was talking about a study that we recently performed. That wasn't really a study. We put counters out. We tried to understand some traffic flows and those kinds of things. A traffic study would be way more involved that the developer will be responsible to do. And his study will be concerned primarily with the impact that their development will have on the area in question. And so the differing factor, however, that I want to point out as well, that makes this a typical traffic study way more thorough, particularly in this case, we committed to doing a neighborhood outreach as well as part of the study. And so folks like the speaker and neighbors and so on will be able to come and provide some input with regard to that study process that too will be quite a bit different than what we did in our analysis to provide for you. So I would expect a lot more involvement, not only of the neighbors, but of engineers and so forth with regard to the product that we're anticipating with this development.
Any others? So Carter, I was going to just ask it, what is the benefit? And I really kind of want to turn, as we're talking about the zone changing of this, what is some of the benefit that the neighborhood can get from this change, this type of a zoning change?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. The benefit that I see as a result of the developer being willing to go through a zoning change is that from now and forever, until someone on the council decides to change it otherwise, the amount of businesses that could be placed on that corner will be restricted and brought down and narrowed and so on. Whereas right now, with regard to the classification that that corner has, anything can be put there. Virtually anything can be put there. With the change of this zoning classification, that list is narrowed, made smaller, and the actual application for what a developer could put, even when the property sells to other hands, will maintain that restricted level of businesses from forever.
Okay, thank you.
Bet.
And I guess for me, since I've been out there before and had the conversation with Mr. Darling and a couple others, and looking at it, I want to make sure that we're clear. So we've got the zoning change coming, but this is really what we've been talking about. But it sounds like there will be conversation around the traffic, conversations around that, and even gathering information of neighbors, being able to say, hey, look, in the neighborhood, to say, what is it that you are seeing? What are you feeling? I think that's going to be a really important aspect that we need to be able to look at and have that conversation. So any others? And we'll stay in contact, Jay.
Mr. Mayor, may I make one more comment?
You bet.
Some of you have asked about the intersection that has been referenced as well, closer to the Thelma area.
Thank you.
If you will. Pursuant to those questions, if council is comfortable with it, I don't mind talking with Mr. Brower and his team as it relates to doing a separate analysis of that intersection as well. Wherein if we need more regulation at that intersection, we'd be happy to review that separate and apart from this particular development. If council would be willing to give us that direction.
Council okay with giving direction to the city to kind of look at that cross section of Gannett, Thelma, everything? So, okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Awesome. Bet. All right. Anything else? All right. Any amendments? Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please report the vote.
12 councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the ordinance on third reading by title only.
Ordinance amending chapter 15.12 of the Casper Municipal Code, Board of Examiners and Appeals and Contractor Licensing.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Bond, seconded by Councilor Kathy. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. Anybody who would like to speak? Mr. Schiffman.
Mayor, this might be weird. The manager during the work session said there were some amendments to this ordinance. I have two suggestions. Maybe they've been discussed. One is a definition of handyman, because I didn't see that in there. There is a class 4 group, but this looks more like apprentice or builders, plumbers, and mechanics, electricians, as opposed to what I think is, simple fixing a door, cleaning a gutter, putting a workbench together, something like that. The other suggestion, if it hasn't been, I know you spoke about it last time, is setting a fee, a reasonable fee. My concern is that it's hard to get sometimes some help for basic stuff. And if the fee is too high, then it just makes it a little difficult to do that. So those are my suggestions. So I don't know if that was something that council had discussed.
When we get to our discussion phase, might
Okay,
address that.
thank you.
Great, thank you. Any others who wish to speak? You're good.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm here in person.
You're fine.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor, for the 11th hour. I don't want that. I was hoping someone else would bring some of my concerns.
No, you're good.
First of all, I'm here to suggest that the council maybe have significant more discussion about the third reading of this ordinance. Handyman is a catch-all title for everything not currently covered in the ordinance, and suggesting that a single test is adequate for the varied skills and abilities in this handyman title is a little absurd, first of all. Second, requiring an academic test to prove one's ability to work within their trade seems outside of the box of thinking, particularly when we're talking about many of the demographic in this group who are not academically as capable as others. Third, the problems that this change suggests to solve, protecting citizens from fraudulent or shoddy work, can't be solved with an ordinance, and the city is not an appropriate governing body to license these professionals. An individual in this type of work may have varied skills or just a few. Will there be multiple tests? Lumping handyman skills into one test and licensing someone who is going to haul away residential garbage or provide after construction haul away services, rebuild a deck or a fence, both of which you can do without getting a license from the city, replacing an attic fan, refinishing a wood floor, sand, caulk, paint your exterior windows. The list continues. Having one test to cover all of these abilities and all of these jobs sounds like more of an undertaking than this ordinance is prepared to cover. Is the city of Casper willing to stand by a licensing procedure that doesn't cover one specialty? So if an accomplished drywall finisher receives a handyman license, it wouldn't be outside of reason for a citizen to think that that handyman could also replace all their ceiling fans or install a wall in their backyard that's shorter than 2 feet, or add gutters to an existing roof. All handyman jobs. How does anyone rely on city licensing if it's so encompassing and without specialty? Other licenses within this ordinance require proof from a governing body. A boiler operator has to have 3 full months of full-time experience in an actual operation of a boiler. Mechanical journeymen require a completion of a 4-year mechanical training program recognized by the federal government. A plumber has to complete a 5-year term under a master plumber. The city of Casper is not a governing body when it comes to the skills you're attempting to license. The second point is that the diversity in Casper has increased substantially in the last 5 years. And I'm wondering if the city is prepared for that. Do we have multiple languages of tests? I had stucco installed on a client's home before I painted it. And I got a Portuguese interpreter so that we weren't missing anything in those conversations. Is the city of Casper prepared to test in multiple languages for people who are already working in this service to the community and in this profession? Are we going to, in essence, rid ourselves of that diversity by giving an English only or an English proficient test? Will individuals who are poor test takers be given another option to be licensed? I certainly know that the person refinishing my floors doesn't need to be able to answer any questions on a test. I need them to refinish my floors well. And as an individual using those contractors, I understand the personal responsibility of getting references and talking to other people and seeing their work before it's done. In previous council meetings, the argument has been made that this licensing will stop fraudulent work from being done. You can't politicize. I think I might have made up that word. Personal responsibility. You can't. The folks who hire a handyman now without getting references and seeing the person's work are the same people who will use the city's licensing as a crutch to hire someone without getting any of that information. And what liability does that put on the city after we've licensed these individuals and say it's safe for them to come into your home? We have multi-million-dollar contractors in Casper who are crummy and do terrible work and are working just fine every single day. As the people hiring them, it's our responsibility, and they're licensed and insured as contractors. So in the end, the change doesn't solve the problems it attempts to address. Only personal responsibility can do that. And maybe there's an education piece available there. As far as I know, the city hasn't prepared to offer the license to the diverse population performing handyman work in our community. And creating an academic test that may or may not apply to the specialty or lack of specialties based on the individual handyman is not something that the city of Casper can be a government body and provide.
You have a question, Brad?
No, I don't have a question for Amber necessary. Maybe I'll.
Want to wait till the discussion? Sure, perfect. Okay. Good. Any others wish to address the council regarding this ordinance? Okay. Discussion. Okay. Counselor Gamrot.
Thanks for the folks that gave their feedback. Amber, clearly you know more about this stuff than I do. This is one of those issues that are just contracting and licensing and building and stuff is just not my ballpark. And so I'm definitely relying heavily on the folks that work in that industry to help guide my own personal opinion on this. I was curious if, I see we have Justin here, so I was curious if he had any rebuttals or any context he could help frame around some of Amber's comments specifically. Obviously, I don't know enough to ask the right question to Amber, so I was hoping somebody that works in the industry might be able to provide some more information.
Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, maybe we could frame Mr. Scott's response a little bit in that I do appreciate an interest in some kind of response, that's for sure. First of all, the response to Mr. Schriftman's questions might be helpful as it relates to fees, which we had prepared some information for council previously along those lines, as well as with respect to definitions and the classification that particular license might require. And then maybe we can go into some of Amber's questions.
Perfect.
Pursuant to that.
Justin, can you answer Mr. Schriftman's question based around the fees?
Yes, Mayor, Council. So we don't set fees. So as far as what the handyman, we're saying handyman is actually a class 4 contractor's license. Handyman is just there to give people an idea of it being an entry level step into the licensing category. So the city of Casper doesn't have the ability to set fees as far as what individuals or a class 4 contractor can or will charge. That'll be based on the work they're providing, what their labor rate is, and so forth, so on. The fee for the license will be $150, the same fee that we have for every other licensing category, except for the class 1 contractor, which is the highest level of contract you can have. So it'll be $150 initial application fee to get that license, and every year you'll have a $75 renewal fee. With answer that question.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate the information. And then in regards to sort of the written test to try to gauge competency around a varied amount of skill sets and stuff, do you have an opinion on whether a written test can kind of capture?
So all contracting trades, doesn't matter whether you're going for a journeyman, electrician, master electrician, journeyman plumber, journeyman mechanical, general contractor. In the contracting trade, all individuals are required to take a written test of some sort. So the testing requirement for the class 4 contractor would be based off of similar International Code Council, which is the governing body for the codes. That's codes we enforce. International Residential Code, International Building Code, Plumbing Code, Mechanical Code. We take questions that are generated by the ICC that are comparable to what that license classification will allow you to do and put those on the test for examination. So an applicant for a class 4 would have the option to either take the in-house test that we create and that the licensing board approves, which in this case would be the appeals board. That would be a function that they would still maintain and be approving the test that we write. Or they would have the option to take an equivalent International Code Council ICC certification exam and provide that with their application. So, did I get your question answered on that?
I think so.
Councilor Jensen. Sure.
I don't even know how to do this. very well, but, okay, so just so I'm trying to understand this correctly, so not every handyman needs to be licensed. It's like an option for them. So if there was a general handyman that wants to go clean gutters and put together a workbench, they don't necessarily need to be licensed to do that, but it would benefit them more if they wanted to advertise themselves as being licensed and want to get to this step of a step 4 contracting license.
Yes, and Counselor. The intent of the class 4 license is to give individuals a entry-level step into the licensing category. So yes, you're correct. A handyman can do work that's currently not required to be permitted. This licensing classification would give them an entry-level steps. They'd be able to go above what doesn't require a permit to do certain items like installing windows that requires permitting.
Right.
To build an accessory structure that's over 120 square feet. They'd be allowed to do some entry-level carpentry construction work, start documenting their experience so that they can work their way up to a class 3 general contractor license.
If they're driven to.
If they're driven to do that, yes. It gives the individuals who are truly out there operating a business as a handyman or entry-level craftsman, the opportunity to get licensed, be insured, establish a reputable company, and gain experience.
And we're not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that doesn't put the city at any liability with that once they're licensed. Like, nothing, there's no, like, we said that they're licensed through us. Are we putting the city at risk being?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Jensen, I don't think, so we currently have a licensing, process for 3 other licenses. And adding this would really not expose the city to any additional liability. For one, and this is really the primary thing, any allegation against the city based on negligence, that i.e. we negligently license somebody, would be precluded by the Governmental Claims Act. I mean, garden variety negligence is not actionable against the city. To the extent that there's exceptions to that, to the exceptions that there could be a federal claim, that liability already exists. So I don't see that adding this necessarily would expose the city to any additional legal liability.
Anything else? Any others? Yeah, Counselor Caproth.
Thanks, Mayor. Again, apologies, bear with me, very elementary understanding of how this all works. It was brought up the fact that we have current licensed contractors that potentially do shoddy work and potentially undermines the legitimacy, I guess, of that license. Justin, do you mind reminding me, if somebody has an issue with work done by a licensed contractor, what mechanisms are available to them to, get some sort of remediation or recourse? What does that process look like if you have an issue with someone's work, quality work?
Mayor, Councilor. So a couple of things. This ordinance as a whole, we're creating additional steps as far as more responsibilities for contractors. We're creating a process for a formal contractor complaint process where we're creating a form for individuals to fill out, to submit, so we can start tracking history of complaints. We're creating a license penalization path. I don't want to use the word penalization, but a pathway to where we now have probation, suspension, revocation. We have steps that we can take in the event that a contractor is violating regulations that are set out within the ordinance. So we're strengthening it in that aspect. As far as individuals who wish to complain about work that's being done, that process will be established for them to be able to do that. I do want to make it aware that our job is to enforce minimum code. We can't enforce maximum code. We don't enforce quality. So in the event that the contractor is not meeting minimum code, or if they're violating some of the contractor licensing regulations that are set forth in the ordinance, that would be something that would be I'll have to follow up.
Fair.
If you have somebody that came to you or that did some work to the house, replaced a bunch of windows and didn't do a very good job or whatever else, and worked on the house, they came to the city and asked for a permit. What is the recourse for the public that they would have through the city for this person doing non-permitted work?
So in your, Mayor, Council, you're asking if it is found that somebody has done unpermitted work, you want to know what,
And then they come to the city and they want to know what kind of a recourse that the city can do to this contractor who is not licensed through the city, that is just somebody out there doing stuff. What is the public's recourse for that?
so as far as notifying us, they would notify us. They're not licensed, so I can't penalize license. So they would, more likely, we would have to look at, criminal, issuing a citation for doing unpermitted work. If it's a homeowner who has hired a contractor, we can work with the homeowner to have a permit pulled. Come in and look at the work. If necessary, we can require them all to be opened up so that we can inspect framing. It just depends on the scope of work that had happened in that situation.
Mayor,
Please.
councilors, just to add on, Mr. Scott's comments, I think that's absolutely correct. If they're unlicensed, we obviously can't penalize their license, but, that would be in violation of city ordinance, so it would, technically be a misdemeanor that we could, prosecute, through municipal court. And in addition, and just to build off, again, Mr. Scott's comments, not every issue is going to be something that the city, from a regulatory standpoint, can address. And so that aggrieved homeowner always has the ability to go to court, to file a civil, cause of action and to litigate it. And again, there are certain minimum requirements that we're going to enforce, but if the party's contracted for some level of finish or something above and beyond those minimum requirements, they may have failed to meet the contractual obligations, but they may be in compliance with the city regulations. So in that scenario, we would not have regulatory ability, but they would certainly still have the ability to proceed and file a civil cause of action. So it's very case dependent. And I think what Mr. Scott was trying to say, what we're working into this is progressive discipline, essentially. Under the current iteration of the ordinance, it's very unclear what steps that we can take, how that works in terms of disciplining or penalizing somebody that's in violation. And so I think the intent of what's before you is to make that more progressive, to give contractors clearer notification that if you have these violations, here's what you can expect in terms of license suspension, penalties, et cetera, et cetera. So Justin, if I misstated anything, please correct me, but that's my understanding of it.
I'm gonna get Carter really quick and then I'll get you, Councilor Sutherland. Carter.
Mr. Mayor, just to be real clear though, too, with regard to general contractors, for example, who are kind of at the peak of licensure as well as needing to pull permits and those kinds of things, that law is already in place, that if they're operating without permits and they're operating without licenses, they're already subject to the penalties of the law. The handyman license or that class 4 license is a different story, however. As Mr. Scott indicated, this is an entry-level opportunity for folks who aspire to gain the necessary elements in their experience and career to become a general contractor. Some may not want to do that, however. And so my question remains, and I think it might bear Mr. Scott repeating, if indeed a handyman type contractor is found to be doing work without a handyman license, will they suffer the same consequences of the law as a general contractor would in the same circumstance? If I may, Mr. Mayor.
You bet, absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilors. So a handyman is operating within the guidelines of doing work that's not required to be permitted. Then they can operate as a handyman doing work that's not required to be permitted. If they're wishing to do work which this license lays out, it kind of ventures into the class 3 categories such as replacing windows, building structures that exceed 120 square feet. Some of the items that do require permit by code, then they would need to get licensed and pull permits to do that work. If they were found to be doing work that requires to have a permit, then yes, they would fall victim to possible repercussions.
As a follow-up, Mr. Mayor,
You
if I
bet.
could, thank
Absolutely.
you. But if they were operating within their lane, the class 4 level of work, and they don't have a handyman license or a class 4 license, are they gonna bear the same penalties as someone else in higher classification?
So if they're, just so I'm understanding what you're saying, they are operating in the class 4 licensure category.
Right.
And they're not pulling permits?
No, they don't have a license.
They don't have a
In
license.
other words, they didn't get that class 4 license. And they're doing handyman, true blue handyman work.
So they would need to be licensed to be able to do that. If they weren't, then yes, they would. We would hold them accountable for doing unpermitted work.
Councilors.
A follow-up, Amber raised a question about language and accessibility, and I am curious for these, I mean, are all of these tests English only, or are there opportunities?
So our in-house tests, they're all written in English. I mean, they're English tests. I believe ICC, if you wish to take an ICC equivalent exam, I believe ICC does offer other alternatives. It's definitely something we could look into.
Yeah, I would maybe, I mean, I'd be curious about, I mean, I do understand what Amber's saying there, and I certainly wouldn't want this to become an additional barrier to entry into work that somebody's capable of doing. So if it's possible, I don't know what that requires from council, but it's possible to provide information about how to access it in different instances or to investigate the option. So I'd love to explore that.
All up on my side.
No, please, yeah.
I do stress that individuals take the ICC certification exams when, at all times, because they're a national exam. So if you get, say you get a class 1 general contractor certification through ICC, that should be good nationally. No matter where you go to get licensed, they should accept that. We always stress taking that exam.
Councilor Gamble.
For the sake of clarification, Justin, do you mind the question city manager just posed to you about the consequences for somebody who's licensed or unlicensed, not doing work? I guess I'm still a little unclear. If somebody who does not have a class 4 handyman license is doing work like drywall patch and repair, replacing a toilet, flange, but they did pull the permit, they're unlicensed, but they did pull the appropriate permits, that would still be allowed, correct? The license isn't mandatory to do that sort of work, only the permit?
So, Councilor Mayor, they wouldn't be able to pull a permit if they're not licensed. A homeowner is allowed to pull a permit and hire, if you're a single family residential homeowner, you're allowed to pull a permit and hire basically whoever you want to come in and do the work. In order for a contractor to be able to pull a permit, they do have to be licensed with City of Casper.
Mayor, Council, so hopefully I can maybe clarify this. I think using the moniker handyman, which is actually not in the ordinance, I think is somewhat confusing because when we think of a handyman, we might think of somebody raking leaves or, doing yard work or some very rudimentary types of things. And those types of things would not be governed by the proposed ordinance language. In 1512.050, it lays out the different classes of contractor licenses. And so the new proposed class would be a class 4, and that's what's euphemistically being referred to as the handyman license. But it's very specific in what it applies to. And I think Councilor Gamroth was kind of reading from that list. It's drywall, patching, you know, roofing, shingle repair, window, door removal and replacement, et cetera, et cetera. And if a individual is wishing to do that type of work under contract as a contractor, in order to pull a permit, they would have to be licensed under the Class 4. And failure to do so, if they were doing that work, would be a violation of the ordinance, subjecting them to penalties or potential discipline. If they're doing, you know, basic work that's not delineated here, then they would not be required to gain that type of license. So I don't know if that helps or uses it more, but that's my reading of it.
Gotcha. Michael, do you want,
I just do that follow-up.
you want to do a quick follow-up on that?
to
Yeah,
what
hold on,
you just
Michael.
said. So if that contractor, a homeowner gets a contractor, then it's up to that homeowner to pull that permit that that whoever wants that contractor to do if the contractor's not licensed.
That's correct. The homeowner has the ability to pull the license.
Right, the contractor himself, or because he's not licensed, he would not be able to pull a permit, but the homeowner could, and he can go in and do that job without it.
That's correct. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, but then the homeowner would be responsible for compliance with all applicable building codes.
Yeah. So you can still have Jim Bob do your house if you want. You referenced him and he's good. Good. Yes. It's up to the homeowner. References. Perfect.
Counselor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to say thanks to Amber and Mr. Schiffman and Justin for speaking and addressing some of these questions. I want to go back to some of the questions that Amber raised about the testing portion. I am a little curious about that. So on the class 4 contractor license, on the written test that's required for that, and Councilor Sutherland asked the questions about different languages and so forth. But I'm curious about it obviously the test itself hasn't been determined yet, but I'm maybe conjecturing that perhaps the license would be, or the examination rather, would be more not necessarily to determine or verify competence to do the job as much as more familiarity with laws and general provisions of, you know, these are the requirements of the license. This is the type of work I could do. These are the requirements to do that work, you know, so on and so forth, as opposed to actually demonstrating competence that I can replace a window or pull a toilet or do that kind of thing. Is that a fair description, Justin, do you think?
Mayor, Counselor, so yes, so the testing would be to gauge the applicant's knowledge of the code.
Yeah.
What the codes require.
Yeah.
So if you go into the licensing categories where it explains what a Class 4 contractor do, window replacement, drywall, light drywall repair, roofing repair, it would gauge whether they know what an egress window is.
Yeah.
What the dimensions are. Question geared towards that, and then also what municipal code, any amendments we have in municipal code, so that they're aware of what those are.
But so again, kind of mostly aimed at knowing kind of the scope of their licensing, that they know that if I go outside this scope and fail to meet these requirements or do something they're not supposed to do or don't do something they're supposed to do, that would be a violation. That's kind of, I would think, more the intent of the test than to demonstrate I can actually do the physical work, but.
Correct. It's to gauge their knowledge in the field that they're going to be.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Counselor Paul.
Thank you. Probably for the two of you, is it accurate to say that we have not changed anything about the types of work that are required to be licensed? We have simply fractioned off some of the simpler types of work that are currently required to be licensed under Class 3 and given an opportunity for folks who do not have the experience set to achieve a Class 3 license to still do some elements that are currently included in class 3, but do it with a lower bar to entry, right? We haven't created new license requirements for types of work. Those things are already required to be licensed. Is that correct? Everything that we're talking about in class 4 is already required to be licensed.
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, I would say that that is probably a fair assessment. The difference being that for those who are at a lower experience level, perhaps a lower competency level, and, you know, are on a path of developing that skill set over time, that work is what is being envisioned with respect to this class 4 license.
But we're not saying things that once did not need a licensed contractor to perform now do. These are all the same. If you wanted to patch drywall now, you would need a class 3 license. But we're saying actually you could do that with a class 3 light, which we're going to call class 4.
Do you agree with that, Mr. Scott?
Mayor and councilors, yes, we are not saying that you can't do this work with a class 3. Right now, a class 3 contractor would be what would be required for a lot of these flip houses or whatever you want to call them. We are creating an opportunity for individuals to do some of the work that a class 3 contractor could do, but not all of it. We don't want to infringe on what a class 3 contractor has earned, you know, their work experience, what they have gone through to obtain their license. We want to give people an entry level field to be able to start gaining knowledge, gaining experience, and progress throughout the licensing categories.
Thank you. It's helpful. And I just wanted to mention too, I got on the ICC website. Didn't see a ton about languages, though I did see you are allowed to have translation services in your test taking, and they have accommodations for test taking disabilities, that sort of thing.
Counselor Haskins,
Okay, I have one, maybe two, depending on my one.
you're good.
So I don't want to say dumb it down, but let's dumb it down for me just a smidge. Okay, by getting a license, they will now have to be bonded and insured, correct?
Mayor, yes, they'll have to be insured.
Okay, so this protects the homeowner. So the way I'm looking at it, if I built a deck, which I did by myself, I pulled the permit. A part of that permit included the plans and me saying, this deck's going to be safe. If the deck is not safe, that's on me. I will pay for everything if something happens to someone. So if I pull a permit as the homeowner and hire Dave, who has no license, and I didn't think to ask if he was bonded, or he said, yeah, I am, and he wasn't, and my neighbor falls off the deck and dies, that's on me. Whereas if I use a class 4 now, he has insurance, he pulls the permit himself, that's on him, and I have some sort of repercussion if something major happens. Yes? So I don't want to pull a permit myself unless I'm actually doing the work. And if a guy says, well, pull the permit for me and I'll do this, he's probably potentially going to put me in a position where I'm going to get sued, just maybe, if I'm worst case scenarioing it. So this really is protecting me as a homeowner because I wanted to find the cheap guy, theoretically. Yes?
Right.
All right, thank you.
Counselor Kathy.
Basically, all I was going to say is along the lines of Councilor Haskins, is that basically to repair a fence, you're supposed to have a fencing permit. If I go out and hire Joe Blow off the street to fix my fence and he doesn't have a license, he can't get the permit. So that eliminates him, but it's just like Councilor Haskins said, if I go get the permit, I can go out and hire my grandson to go fix the fence, but it's still all on me. And there is a difference between licensing and bonding. Licensing, well, I shouldn't say that, insured and bonded. A bond is something that is provided by the contractor that if he walks off the job in the middle of it, then the bond is called and you get the money to fix the rest of the project. Insurance would be like you're talking about. If he put in bad material and didn't follow your plans and something happens, then that's on the insurance company. So that's also kind of, and as was mentioned, most of the contractor licensing, from when I got my contractor's license, I would say probably 80% of that test was all about the code and the application of the code. As Mr. Scott mentioned, is if you put in an egress window in the basement, how big it has to be, how big the clear opening has to be, if it's got a sliding window, these types of things that as you move up in the contracting business, you need to learn and know. Is that also a fair assessment?
Sure.
Trying to summarize what everybody's been.
Anything else? Okay. All right. Any amendments? Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please report the vote.
All counselors voting aye.
Good discussion. Thank you, everyone. Please read the ordinance on third reading by title only. Chair to entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Bond, seconded by Counselor Kathy. Council will now listen to public comment. Comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be. Anybody who wishes to speak for or against? Okay. Discussion. All right, any amendments? Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
All counselors
Thank you. Council will now consider consent resolutions. Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
NA2, approving a contract for professional services between the city of Casper and 307 Shredding LLC for the secure destruction of confidential documents and records. 10A3, authorizing amendment number 1 to the lease agreement with Casper Mountain Ski Patrol for the lease of the ski patrol building. 10A4, authorizing the city manager to execute lien statements and or lien releases up to $35,000. 10A5, authorizing the release of local assessment district lien regarding 4200 Coates Road, Casper, Wyoming. 10A6, authorizing an agreement between Image Trend LLC and the city of Casper in the amount of $27,570 to procure records management system. 10A7, authorizing a contract between the city of Casper and All Traffic Data Services LLC for traffic counts. 10A8, authorizing the mayor to sign the Casper Historic Preservation Commission annual report. 10A9, adopting and setting forth rates for wholesale water service, retail water service, and sewer service for the city of Casper, Wyoming, and rescinding 21-178. 10A10, establishing rates for residential and commercial solid waste collection, recycling, and disposal at the Casper Solid Waste Facility, and rescinding resolution number 21-179. 10A11, approving the Highway Safety Program Grant FFY 2024 sub-award agreement between the Wyoming Department of Transportation Highway Safety Program and the Casper Police Department for the purchase of in-car video camera equipment. 10A12, authorizing change order number 6 to the agreement with Casper Building Systems Incorporated for the City Hall and Project State Building Remodel Project. 10A13, authorizing amendment number 1 to the contract for professional services between the City of Casper, Wyoming and Motorola Solutions Incorporated for an upgrade solution to critical public safety equipment. 10A14, authorizing an amendment to the employment agreement between the City of Casper, Wyoming and Robert Ham Jr. And 10A15, authorizing the City Council to appoint Keith Robert Dakbar as a provisional judge for the Casper Municipal Court and enter into a contract for professional services.
Thank you. Chair to entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda items just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Pollock, seconded by Councilor Jensen. Mr. City Manager, do you have any comments on any of these items?
Do not, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any abstentions or nay votes? Counselor Kathy?
I need to abstain from 10A3, the lease agreement with the ski patrol.
Any others? All right, all voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With Counselor Capps,
Thank you. Eric, I've got a quick question on the consent minute action. Can an item be removed off of this? Council member wants to.
Mr. Mayor, I do believe, the intent would be to move it to handle it, separately. I think we could do that.
Okay.
Just like, any other.
Okay.
agenda that would be dealt with.
Okay.
separately.
At what point would someone want to be able to remove an item off there?
I think, I would probably just do it right up.
Okay. Go ahead.
Could I ask that we remove item A11, pending, we haven't done interviews for the open positions for this board yet. That's happening on Friday, so just ask that we remove that until we can make a complete recommendation to fill all those seats.
Yeah, go ahead.
So would you like to postpone that item? Is
Yes.
that your motion?
Mhm.
You guys just get a
Do
motion.
second?
Okay, I need a second for that. Okay, seconded by Counselor Kathy. Any discussion around that? Okay. All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
with all counselors voting.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, please read the consent minute action titles. Sorry. Thank you.
11A1, authorizing the purchase of one new 53-foot box fan trailer for use by the solid waste facility. 11A2, authorizing the purchase of one new turf utility vehicle for use by Highland Cemetery. 11A3, authorizing the purchase of two new utility all-terrain vehicles for use by the Weed and Pest Division of the Parks, Recreation, and Public Facilities Department and the wastewater treatment plant at the Public Services Department. 11A4, authorizing the purchase of two new half-ton crew cab 4x4 pickup trucks with 8-foot beds for use by the wastewater collection of the Public Services Department. 11A5, authorizing the purchase of one new 1-ton crew cab 4x4 pickup truck with 8-foot bed for use by the Weed and Pest Division of the Parks, Recreation, and Public Facilities Department. 11A6, authorizing the purchase of one new half-ton extended cab 4x4 pickup truck with 6-foot bed for use by the Water Distribution Division of the Public Services Department. 11A7, authorizing the purchase of one 3/4-ton extended cab 4x4 pickup truck for use by the Water Distribution Division of the Public Services Department. 11A8, authorizing the purchase of one new 1-ton crew cab pickup truck with 8-foot bed and Tommy liftgate for use by the Special Waste Division of the Public Services Department. 11A9, reappointing Randall W. Hine and John Lane to the Casper Historic Preservation Commission for 3-year terms expiring December 31st, 2026. 11A10, reappointing Mark Pepper to the Economic Development Joint Powers Board for 3 years expiring December 31st, 2026. 11A12, appointing Charles Moore to the Hall of Justice Joint Powers Board and Natrona County Joint Powers Board for 3-year terms expiring December 31st, 2026. And 11A13, reappointing Mike McIntosh and appointing Ann Rubel and Andrew Beamer to the Casper Planning and Zoning Commission for 3-year terms expiring December 31st, 2026.
Thank you. Chair to entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda items just read.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Paul, seconded by Counselor Gamroth. Any abstentions or nay votes? Okay. All voting aye, say aye.
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 Please report the vote.
With all councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
At this time, we ask councilors to bring forward relevant concerns or items of interest. We'll start with Counselor Siddle. Great. Counselor Jensen.
I know.
No worries. It's okay. Counselor Gam. Counselor Gamron.
be the last weekend for Escape with Santa at David Street Station. So if you haven't had the opportunity yet, this will be your last chance to take advantage. And then between Christmas and New Year's, they're doing some themed nights next week. You know, beach day, ugly sweater days. So if you participate in any of those, you can get entered for prizes. So I would just encourage folks, if you haven't gone out and done ice skating around the community Christmas tree, a couple good opportunities here in the next week or two. Last day to skate is January 14th. So you got 3 or 4 weeks left before you got to shut her down for the season. And then also the Casper Ice Arena has expanded their public skating hours. Sounds like from 1 to 3 every day, all the way through Christmas Eve. So if you'd rather skate indoors, it sounds like there's some extra opportunities at the ice arena as well.
Counselor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing really. Just wish everyone happy holidays and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, and enjoy your holidays.
Counselor Cappy.
Made this breakfast Thursday morning and wonderful city employees. Got to meet several of them that I hadn't met before, and want to say a thank you to all of them, and may not be politically correct, but Merry Christmas to everybody. Whatever holiday you want to wish, but Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Counselor Haskins.
I don't really have a whole lot. I have a public health meeting on this Thursday for the first time in several months. We're meeting, so hopefully next week. Well, no, I will not tell you about it next week. The week after. I'll try to remember the week after, I swear.
Thank you. Counselor Pollock.
I don't have anything tonight.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
I don't have anything either. I just wish everybody very much happy holidays and be safe and enjoy your families.
Thank you. I just have a couple items. I attended the LGBTQ advisory committee on Friday, so it was good. Good to touch base with them. It had been a while since I've been able to make it to that meeting. Couple new youth members. I'm representing both NC and Kelly Walsh groups to kind of have a little bit more of a youth voice, youth presence, to talk about issues surrounding youth and LGBTQ issues. So it was good to hear their comments and to talk about some of the things that they're going on. Also talked about some surveys as we're kind of processing some of the information that's coming from surveys present within the community and how people in relation to issues surrounding the LGBTQ community. Also, some questions came around about asking if as we pass the non-discrimination or the non-discrimination ordinance, question of policy and the process if somebody does make a report, and what does that look like? And so I know we have the ordinance itself, but just some people had wanted to know what there was if somebody was coming to Casper, said, okay, I know you have this, but what is the policy to get through to that? So just something that had been brought up. Maybe we can look into that, Carter. I'd say there's any looming, anybody's doing that, but just wanting to know the process if that's the case that happens. Got a couple morning meetings, one this Thursday. We have the, officially it's called the Natrona County Council of Governments. So I'll be doing that. I'll be introducing Steve as our incoming mayor. And of course, Lisa's been there to that meeting with all the commissioners and all the mayors from around the municipalities in the surrounding county. So I'll be doing that at Angleton. So, and I want to wish everybody a wonderful holidays. You all have a restful, peaceful time, and hopefully 2024, like Mr. Schriffen said, is a much more peaceful time. So we'll continue to offer that up in our prayers. Thank you so much. A notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have matters to discuss related to litigation and personnel. The chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into an executive session, and at the conclusion of that executive session, to reconvene this regular meeting solely for the purposes of adjournment of this regular meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Pollock, seconded by Councillor Sutherland. There are a majority of councillors present, and a motion to adjourn into an executive session has been moved and seconded. This motion requires a 2/3 majority of the council present. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote. A greater than 2/3 majority of the council present voted in favor of the motion, and we are hereby adjourned to an executive session. Take care, everyone. Be safe.